President Trump in the middle of an immigration debate over due process.
Fox 5 legal analyst Wendy Patrick is here with more in today's Inside the Law. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so surprise, surprise, this all started with a tweet, another tweet from President Trump over the weekend. We're going to read the tweet and then we'll chat. Here's what the tweet said. We cannot allow all of these people to invade our country. When somebody comes in, we must immediately, with no judges or court cases, bring them back from where they came. I think he meant send them back.
That's right.
But that being what it is that even legal?
Well, due process is a concept that applies to persons in the United States if you're on U.S. soil, not just citizens. So if they are inside the United States, they have due process rights. However, the amount of process that is due depends on where you are. In other words, there is much more opportunity to get a hearing and a court process if you're inside the U.S. than if you're at the border. And also remember, we have what's called expedited removal procedures. If you're caught within 100 miles of the border, there's a 2-year period. So there are exceptions. But in a word, you cannot do away with due process simply by a tweet.
So you're saying that illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants who come here, they have the right to this process?
Life, liberty, right. It's due process if you are a person on U.S. soil. What I think the president, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he's talking about not letting people in to begin with if they try to cross illegally.
Right.
Because remember, he talks a lot about a border wall, but the visa overstays won't be stopped by a border wall because they came in through the door. So I am assuming he is talking about turning away people at the border.
I mean, we're getting into really thick into the weeds of legal proceedings here. If you're talking about persons in this country have that due process right, what if the folks who were on the opposite side of the fence seeking asylum, where do you differentiate due process and sending them back with asylum, refugee status? Where does all that come together?
It gets complicated, doesn't it? But they are absolutely entitled to seek asylum. And what I think is confusing to some people is we've got the criminal prosecution of illegal entry. And remember, that's temporarily been suspended due to space issues. And then we've got the civil removal proceedings, which is something very different. And then, of course, overlaying all of that is the opportunity to seek asylum and also to appeal an adverse ruling. Remember, the majority of people that seek asylum don't get it. They have the opportunity to appeal. That's all wound up in that idea of due process. So there's a lot of proceedings that are available for people that enter illegally. I think the president is probably just expressing frustration over the entire thing rather than attempting to set a new policy.
Okay, but speaking of the policy, the president is trying to change a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Talk to me, Wendy, a little bit about the executive order. What can he exactly do? Can he change the process?
Well, he can't by executive order change the Constitution, and said differently, any executive order has to be constitutional. His idea of reunifying families and not separating them, that's great, but it is easier said than done. That's what we've been discussing over the last couple of days. Now, we keep getting these reports coming out that they know where everybody is, but remember one of the main concerns. It's not separating adults from children, it's separating parents from children, because those adults have to be vetted to make sure they're really the parents. We worry about human trafficking, we worry about MS-13. We want to make sure that families are kept together, not just adults and children they came in with.
I was watching and reading a lot over the weekend. They said that it might be 2-3 weeks before the courts completely reverse that executive order that he issued just last week. Is that going to happen in terms of the separation of families and...
Well, I think what's complicated is the number of children which were removed, and the government is working to reunify. But remember, when you have that many people and when you have to vet the parents to make sure they're really the parents, these take time. Sometimes we say the wheels of justice move slowly. It's frustrating when children are involved, but that's what the president's order was designed to achieve as soon as possible.
I see a lot of messages go back and forth on social media. Wendy, I don't know anybody who knows the law, really, in my opinion, better than you.
You too.
Yeah, well, no, I never finished law school. You did. Explain right now the laws for any family, anybody who is coming, even an individual, into the country right now. What are the current laws that they're facing as far as their immigration goes?
Well, the first thing, Shelley, is it depends on why they're coming. You know, lots of people come legally on visas for a variety of reasons. Some people are coming seeking asylum. It depends on why they're coming, and it depends on where they're showing up. In other words, are they coming to a legal point of entry? or are they seeking
Yeah.
to come in another way? And the answers to those questions determine the way they'll be treated on the American side. And again, the amount of process that's due depends on where they're apprehended as well.
And while we were having this discussion, this story just broke here. I want your thoughts. Supreme Court just upheld the president's ban on the travel ban from several mostly Muslim countries. That's been going back and forth. The Supreme Court just upheld it. Your thoughts?
I'm not surprised because that's the direction that the lower courts have been going. Because remember, the travel ban 3.0 is very, very different than the first travel ban, which people were calling the Muslim ban. It has now been more narrowly tailored to issues of national security as opposed to targeting people that happen to be of different nationalities. So that's not really a surprise. And there was a bit of forecasting during oral argument that led some of us to believe this would be the decision.
Okay, wow, Wendy Patrick. You need to just stay here the whole time.
No, please.
Okay with
It's
me.
the direction
Talk
we're
all
going
day.
in. Wendy Patrick, I appreciate your time. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Still ahead here.